with all due respect.
All right. With all due respect, we can't say what episode this is because we don't know what episodes it's going to be, right? You used to open up with what episode is, and like we're like, with all due respect, episode. Now we're like, well, we don't know, right? So, this is an episode I've been really looking forward to. We're gonna my friend Jamie Damsker, who's a client, who has turned into a friend, who's turned into a guy that I've really started to enjoy the conversations that we have outside of just like fitness and nutrition and working out and this program. And it's been bigger than that for me, right? It's been a real pleasure because it's helped me grow and think through things. I guess when you're a coach, you can't help but be a coach, can you, Jamie? I guess, your conversations are always going. So, Jamie, I'm gonna introduce you, and like I did in the conversation before this, I'm gonna introduce you at a fifth grade level of what I know about what you do, and you can give the Jamie Damsker PhD level um, in the world of leadership coaches, I guess, high performance coaches. Um, you work with people to perform higher than they are currently, whether it's in business, personal. Um, that's my fifth grade introduction, right? My hope is that people listen to this podcast, and whether it's our clients, people that just run into it, and they learn how to get out of the way of their own negative thoughts to perform at a higher level, whether it's fitness, nutrition, business, family, whatever they do. I want them to hear this and go, wow, I can perform higher than I am right now. And what's the process to doing that? So if you can, Jamie, introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, how you got into it. It's going to be a loaded question. And then we'll kind of dive into some of the notes and then see where it navigates here, if you could.
Sure. Well, good morning. Thank you for the kind
Yes.
introduction, Josh and Gray. It's great to be with you guys. And I want you to know that I love what you two do in the domain of health and fitness, because as it relates to all the domains in our life, and I use the word domain to mean I have the domain of being a husband, a father, my health, my business, my financial, spirituality, any aspect of my life I call a domain. And the one that you guys don't just dabble in, but you create powerfully in is, to me, one of the ones where most people are either most asleep to, or they give what I call their power up to the conditions in their life that preclude them from living a life that has them be physically healthy. And you don't have to go too far back in the news, in hours instead of days, to see how people's health, their relationship with it, the the health issues we have as a result of us being negligent about our health. And you can look at the recent murder of the CEO of that insurance company. And so, to me, all of that's related. There's a good friend of mine once said, being healthy is the ultimate flex. So I acknowledge you guys about that. And I'll also say that what we can look at together, and the same things that have people either be very high performance and successful with their health, and the people who ignore it or they come up with all the excuses and reasons, that's just one domain. And we could be looking at any of the domains I mentioned or others, and it would be the exact same conversation, only the context changes. So, in response to your question, I am a leadership and performance coach. I have the privilege of working with executives, entrepreneurs. I've worked with athletes, military people, physicians. I've actually worked with a stay-at-home mom at one point, relatively stay-at-home grandmother, actually. And what I'm committed to in my work with these people is to help them get out of their own way and to create themselves as more effective leaders and performers in their entire lives, not just the situation or the circumstances that they think would have them bring me into their life. And then your question about how did I get into it? It's a long story, but I'll succinctly say dumb luck. I just happened to be in a certain place at the right time. I met someone who said he's a coach. I didn't even know what a coach was, at least in the context or terms as I see a coach. And after a bit of time, there was a thing that happened inside of me as a result of who he's being that had me hire him and commit to becoming a coach. And now today I'm a leadership coach and I'm also a keynote speaker on leadership performance. And I bring neuroscience into that as well.
Sure, sure. What when you say you bring neuroscience into it, right? What's that mean?
so, so I will tell you that, and by the way, everything I'm saying, I'm not asking anyone to hear it like it's true. Like everyone who's listening, you two included, and all your audience, they came to this call, you've come to this call with a lifetime of experiences and decisions like this is true and that's false and that's good and that's bad and that's right and that's wrong. And what I'm asking of everyone who's listening today to do is just put that aside. Just put it like, I'm not asking you to give it up, like, not at all. I would
Mhm.
never ask you to do that, but just put it aside and be open to hearing what I'm saying with an intention of stand in what I'm saying and just look at your life from that place. That's all. And just see what you see. And
Mhm.
then when you're done with that, you can go back if you want to grab everything you had before and you forget everything I said. But right now, today, just be with me.
Yeah.
The greatest asset a human being has is that incredible muscle between your ears, bar none. It's the greatest asset. There is nothing that comes as a close second. The greatest constraint, the greatest risk, the greatest enemy to creating the life you want happens to be that muscle between your ears. There is no close second to it. So, in a way, what I'm saying is you're carrying around your friend and your enemy from cradle to grave. And most people don't know that. So when you ask about neuroscience or what I share about neuroscience, first, I'm not a neuroscientist. And the analogy I would use is, I used to be in fighter aviation in the Air Force. And while I can't build an airplane, I know and knew at the time enough about it so I can successfully employ it to do what it's meant to do. Likewise, with the brain, my intention is if I'm in a conversation, which I'm rarely am unless I'm giving one of my talks, to talk about some of the really nuts and bolts of the neuroscience, how our brain works and why it matters to you. I rarely talk about when I do, it's all very pragmatic. It's the so what of it. That's all. So when I say things like you're not your thoughts, which I do say that,
Mhm.
what I would say that's behind that is we have between 30,000 and 60,000 thoughts per day, you and I. And less than 5% of those are useful. That's
Wow.
a pretty small number. And I'll define useful. Useful are those thoughts that are contributory to the things you tell yourself or others you want to create. Let's just use that as a definition of useful. Now, if you knew that, you could do something with it, even though it sounds like, well, wait a minute, I've got like a 20-to-1 ratio of the not useful to the useful. Yeah, it's stacked against me. Yes, it is. It could seem unfair. Sorry, that's life.
Mhm.
And what makes it really problematic, Josh and Gray, is that we spend our entire life with those thoughts that go through our head like they are us. We think we are our thoughts. We have those 30 to 60,000 thoughts per day, and they all go unexamined and unquestioned. And they do so because we identify as them. And our language reveals that. I am mad. I am in love. I am angry. I am impatient. I am. There's no daylight that we give ourselves between the thought and who we are. And then we ride this roller coaster of
Oh.
our life of emotions. What if we change the language? And language matters. In
Mhm.
my world, language is the fundamental building block of creation. You want to create your life? You start with language, written, spoken, and as importantly, or more importantly, thought, which will bring that idea right back to the domain of health in just a moment if you're open to it. What if I shifted the language to, look, I have a thought of being angry. Just think about, like, let that roll off your tongue and just Just expose yourself to what that could mean. Now, let's go back to the reality, which is most people don't do that. And they are this and they are that. 1 second, I'm happy. Driving home on a Friday night to see my wife, romantic night. I'm happy. I'm happy. I am happy. Someone cuts me off in traffic. Pissed. I honk the horn. I am mad. Instant. Like in an instant. Look at how I let my thoughts, if I don't alter my relationship with them, they drive me. Now, imagine you're an executive in a company, you have a team of people, or Gray, you have a class of people in the morning, you like you did this morning. They all have the same monkey business going on in their brains. And we ask ourselves, we wonder, why can't I create performance in myself and others? Because that's why. Because you're letting the enemy part of your brain way overshadow the resource part. Not only are you not your thoughts, none of them are true. They're just thoughts.
Mhm.
Why is it that we're so willing to believe the ones that tell us, I can't do this, the 20-to-1 ratio, but that 5% that says you can, if none of them are true, and I take a stand for that. Remember what I told everyone. What I'm saying to you is not true. Just be open to hearing it. Why do I believe these and not those? Well, I'll tell you one of the reasons, and this goes back to the neuroscience. This wonderful machine between our ears still thinks we live in caves. It exists for us to survive. If I don't maintain the status quo, if I'm ostracized, if I stand out from the crowd, if I make someone mad at me, I don't get to stay in the cave around the fire in safety. I get thrown out of the cave and I'll get squished by a woolly mammoth or eaten by a T-Rex.
Mhm.
And that sounds funny how I say that, but our brains literally don't know the difference.
Yeah.
And and yet we operate in the world like, oh man, if I in the gym, if I go to the gym and I for the first time ever decide to get on a bench and I'm going to lift just the 45-pound bar with no plates on it, what if people laugh at me? Like it feels like death. It feels like the T-Rex just grabbed you in its jaws. It's not useful. And if I don't see I'm not those thoughts, if I don't see they're not true, I get to decide which ones I take on as true. I'm not going to the gym.
Mm.
I'm not going to go make declarations that are bold in life, the ones that I said bring me to my clients, help them get out of their own way and create extraordinary results. That's my response to the question about neuroscience.
Got it.
Was that responsive, Josh?
Yeah, no, it does. And honestly, here's where my brain goes when I think about the context of health and fitness and nutrition is and I wrote notes. I wrote notes because this is such a big topic, I think, for people. Um, I hear people say these things a lot. Well, two things. They make statements about who they are and their identity, and that they can never change. And one of them is, I've always been big and overweight. Maybe that's just who I am, right? And then you talked about benching, and then the T-Rex and the bench and the woolly mammoth. What that made me think about is there are a lot of people out there who want to get healthy and lose weight, but they're in an environment that doesn't help. They'll hear people say, "Well, just you could come out with us tonight. It's just one meal and one drink, right?" Or why do you got to go to the gym? Can't you just come over, right? You hear used to be a lot more fun, right?
Mhm.
We had a client or not a client, a girl that was on our podcast, and she's lost 163 pounds. She's a friend of mine. I've known her for 15 years. And when I saw she was losing weight, I called her and was just so moved by what she had to say. And I said, what was the hardest part? And she said, food was something I found joy in. Sometimes it was the only thing I found joy in. And this actually broke my heart for her to say, but I'm glad she's past it now. She goes, if I took that away, where would I find my joy? And my friends said, I had friends around me that were like, oh, it used to be like jolly and fun. We'd go eat and get a little tipsy, and you're always that fun big girl that was funny, like the funny big girl, right? And one of the things that comes to my mind is, man, we tell ourselves so many things that are lies. We create a certain identity because of how we grew up, our environment, things that have been said to us that affirm what we think. Um, that seems to be the number one. Listen, I can give you macros and I can give you a workout. That's easy. You can find that online, right? That's not the answer. It's getting past your thoughts. We tell ourselves so many things that just aren't true,
Mm-hmm.
and then we quit. And it comes down to the question that really spawned this podcast. Why do people quit? And again, you dropped the bomb on me, because one thing I like about what you've done is you go, I disagree with your premise on why people quit. I love that. To me, that's all I need to hear. That, right? I need to hear, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to look into this deeper, because if I'm going to help people, I need to understand this better. And you kind of said people quit because of their thought. Would you say that? People quit because of the thoughts they have that just aren't true when it comes to things like this? Because let's face it, if you're not taking care of your health and your wellness, you're not performing at a high level. There's a lot in that I just said, right?
Yeah. Let I want to change some of the language of your question, and I'll tell you why.
Perfect, perfect.
I I don't choose to be in a conversation where the question is about quitting. And I say that because would you say that quitting is good or bad?
Bad.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a judgment. So now imagine you're looking to get through to a human being, and the place they're coming from in that conversation is they've done something bad. Now, I'm not saying you can't get through to them. I'm saying that's a judgment. And in my world, judgments aren't useful.
Okay.
Now, from a place of assessment, which is dramatically different, see, judgment is going to trigger the survival part of the brain. It can't not. You're going to make someone have to defend themselves. And by the way, Josh, I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to call you out on the
No,
question,
I'm
the
okay with
regular
that.
question.
I'm
I
okay
want to
with
I
that.
want to shift it.
No,
What
this is
what
why
what
I
I,
want
what
this
I
podcast. Yeah.
yeah, what I would say is the conversation I'd want to have is around commitment. And in my world, commitment is defined as do what's required. That's it. Now, I've already tipped the bucket on what could get in the way of me being committed, our thoughts.
Mhm.
I mean, really, that's what it is. If I'm committed to something, which is do what's required, and yes, it could come, the source of it is passion or pain. And I would also qualify pain by saying, even to avoid pain,
Mm-hmm.
will be in some type of a committed action, passion or pain. I said earlier that, man, our language is the fundamental building block of creation. I declare that I'm committed to something. And commitment is not 99%, it's 100%. It's like pregnant. I know that's very cliche to use that example, but to me it's accurate. I'm either committed or I'm not committed. There's no gray area, not to me anyway. The gray area is really in the not.
Mm-hmm.
But in the gray area, I'll tell you those stories. Man, like it's windy here and it was raining this morning. How reasonable would it be to say, I was going to go run, but the weather's not good. And 99.99% of the people who all want to stay in the cave in front of the fire too will say, oh yeah, Jamie, yeah. Like most people, most people will support us. They want us to stay in the status quo. Why do you think they encourage us to stay in the status quo? Either Gray or Josh, what do you think?
It's an introspective thing. Like for me, when I talk to my client, I'm big on language. I talk to my clients all the time on language. Personally, what I find when somebody projects what they can't do, they do it onto you. So it's, oh, I was never going to run today. So I'm glad that you're not going to run today because it makes me feel better about me not running and me not running ever. They don't want to be committed to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You're putting a big mirror in front of people by you stepping out of the status quo. And oftentimes how that comes out of them to you or to others in company is like, look at them. Like it's a judgment. And if you're not careful, you'll actually receive it in a way that has you shrink. And I won't mention it, it's not relevant on this podcast, but when I got into what I'm doing, I had ample opportunity to shrink away from becoming the coach I am today. Ample opportunity. And normally it comes from the people closest to you. And by the way, I don't judge them.
No.
Like they're doing the best they can with what they know at the time. And what they know at the time is a bit of a defensive reaction like that. Now they'll tell you they're looking out for you. It's like, man, don't quit your job and go start your own business. You're really going to put your family at risk? Or in your domain, man, do you really have time to go to the gym? Dude, your kids are going to be leaving the house soon. Like, isn't that like on and on? People will get very creative to protect themselves. And if you're not awake to what's really happening there and you believe those thoughts, you're going to start to say, yeah, it's like the old duck season, rabbit season cartoon. Someone keeps saying that you're going to shift your perspective. I grant people the space to do that, and I'm also awake to my susceptibility to it if I fall asleep to my relationship to the thoughts and what's happening there. So, Josh, what I started to say is, if we drop the idea of quitting or not quitting as a judgment, and I come back to the question of commitment, I'll share a quick anecdote with you. A friend of mine, we do a Encore, the organization I'm part of, the leadership we do a leadership coaching, we do a leadership course out on the West Coast twice a year. A dear friend of mine from here in Charleston attended the last course. And when he was there, he shared with the room an experience he had to me like 5 years ago. And I think it's relevant. We both belong to the same business club here in Charleston. And one day I was sitting there and this club puts out a plate of cookies every day, kind of just a Benny for the membership. And he walked up to me and he had a big old chocolate chip cookie in his hand, I think. And he said, man, Jamie, I really shouldn't eat this. You know, I'm either I'm losing weight or whatever the reason was. And I looked at him and I won't say his name. I said, dude, just eat the damn cookie. Like, look, you're either going to be committed to eating the cookie or you're committed to your health. And if you're committed to your health, guess what? That cookie isn't in your hand right now. So eat the cookie. Like, stop. And I didn't necessarily say this, Tim, but now I'm expounding upon it for the purpose of this conversation. Stop dancing with the stories. You're either committed to something or you're not. Get clear
I
about it.
love that.
I do
The
too.
Love that.
liberation, Gray, the liberation that comes from that is spectacular. Now, that doesn't mean things are going to shift, but it clears the clouds. Like, okay, like I will tell both of you and anyone who's listening, the sum total of your commitments in life, the sum total has you where you are right now exactly. It has you where you are in your health, your finances, your relationships, fill in the blank. It's the sum total of your commitments because your commitments, which is do what's required, is what you do. Get clear about it. If you're committed to your health, you'll be what most people would call unreasonable. You know, I've had times when I've traveled where I found myself walking into a gym at 10 o'clock at night, freezing cold, didn't bring the right clothes. So I'm sprinting from my car in a t-shirt and shorts. It's 25 degrees, but I'm doing it because I'm more committed to what I said I am in my health than I am to the thought, oh, it's too late, you can go tomorrow. That's not to say that things don't come up. Yesterday's an example for me. I like to go to the gym in the morning. Something came up and I got really clear that I'm still committed and I went late morning, early afternoon, and that's fine. But it's when you start to see yourself with the stories and the reasons and the excuses where most people are, that's what has, and I'll use your term, Josh, people quit. They're simply more committed to the thing that they tell themselves that has them go to the gym or eat right than they are to going to the gym and eating right. Now, what you can do for them, you could be a demonstration. Like I'm not going to browbeat someone or embarrass them or judge them into changing. It might work, but it's short-lived.
Mm-hmm.
That would have us appeal to the survival piece, the status quo piece. Like, well, I've kind of strong-armed them enough where they're going to feel forced or obligated to do it. But the first rainy day comes up and the gym shoes, the running shoes aren't going on. Now, Gray, one thing I'll contribute before I forget, if I may.
Yeah.
Josh, you talked about the you didn't use the word conditions, but going back to how the brain works in the neuroscience, I won't call it a cheat necessarily, but I think it's an advantage. Your environment does matter. As an example, if I know that I need to get up painfully early to go to the gym or go for a run or anything, I'm going to have my workout clothes out.
Mhm.
They're going to be put out because what I know human nature is, because we take the path of least resistance, if I have to get out of bed in the dark and not wake my wife and not startle the dogs and look for my clothes, there's a better chance than not that I may hit the snooze. There's just something that occurs when you set the environment. Does that mean you need to like eliminate all your friends who try to pressure you to go out for a beer? No. But I have found there are people no longer in my life who may have been in my life because it didn't align for me to have in my life given what I'm looking to create, which is sort of related but not exactly. So I just wanted to get that point across that
Yeah.
your environment absolutely does matter, and commitment would have me put the clothes out. So commitment's present in either case. Sorry,
I
Greg, go ahead. You're going to
No,
ask
you're
me something.
fine. I wanted to continue the conversation of commitment because I love that you use the word commitment. Personally, one of the first words that I got rid of inside of my own thought was try. I hate the word try. There is no try. I love what Yoda
Yes.
says, do or do not, there is no try. So something I work on with my clients a lot, and I have one client I work on with like every day. She would tell you, what do I tell her every day? It's there is no try. The first word that I get rid of is you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. And it's okay if you tell me you're not going to do it because there's different priorities in your day. That's fine. You're going to have a day where it's like, I'm busy. I feel tired from work. It's just not my day. Cool. Tell me you're not going to do it. Don't tell me you're going to try to do it because you're going to give yourself every excuse in the book to be like, I just couldn't do it today. I'm not going to be there. Right. So I love that you phrase it as the word commitment because I think the word commitment holds a really powerful place inside
I
of
mean,
thought.
talk about the
There's no,
power of
yeah.
language, right? The power of
Mhm.
that word. Ah, I wrote that down. Declare your commitment. Declare
Mhm.
it, right? We talk a little bit. I'll give one example of a story. Um, and I feel like I speak in parables a lot because sometimes it's hard to. I can tell you a story. I can't explain to you what happened, but I can tell you a story that describes it. Um, a client has a dinner club, a women's group. Um, she's lost 17 pounds. It's been a real struggle for her, a real struggle. Environment, um, friends, her history with dieting has been an issue. And she hit me up. She's like, "Hey, I got like 6 or 7 friends. We're going out tonight, and it's the first time we've done it in a while." She did an audit of her drinking. Remember, we always have people do an audit of their alcohol, just not that to create a problem, but to say, "Hey, alcohol are empty calories. What can you do to assess that?" And she's like, "I probably have 5 or 6 drinks a week." And then she did an audit. It was like 11 to 13 a week, right? And then her goal was 2 to 3. And she's like, "I'm going out with some friends. I want to eat healthy. I don't want to drink. What should I do?" I said, "Be the first one who orders." Because this is the night they go out. It's appetizers, it's alcohol, it's food, it's fun. It's all of a sudden it's 1 in the morning and they're at someone's house in their backyard and they're having fun. And she hates it the next day. She hates it. The next day, what am I doing? I go, be the first one to order. Order a chicken salad, a glass of water, and a Diet Coke. And she did the first one to order, and she goes, the room went off, the table went quiet. Got awkward. It got
Mhm.
awkward. It got awkward for her. And I said, "Well, what happened?" And she goes, "Actually, somebody else ordered a Diet Coke and a water and a salad too." And she goes, and then uh everybody else ordered what they want. But she goes, there were conversations at the table of like, "Well, what are you doing? Why are you not doing your normal behavior? Why are you not doing?" And she's like, "Well, I'm trying to do this." And the friend was a walking friend who was turned into a drinking buddy. And the friend the next day, they were going for a walk. She's like, "Hey, if you're gonna do this, I'll do it with you." And I was so inspired by that. I go, "You are the first one to do a salad, a water, and a Diet Coke. And you didn't order any of the appetizers. And now guess what happened? Somebody else went, I'm going to do that too."
Mm-hmm.
And I go, man, that almost is so powerful to be the first one to step out of your group. It takes courage. It takes courage to do that because you're like, well, what if they don't want to be my friends anymore? You have that thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's comfortable. I don't want to step out by myself and, like you said, get eaten by the mammoths. And she goes, what could be the negative side of that? She goes, I spend Friday nights alone. I don't get invited anymore. Like all of a sudden they ostracize me because I turned the mirror. And I said, well, you turn the mirror on them. Because now they're
Mm-hmm.
going like, well, maybe I don't need all that food and alcohol. I said, I don't know what I'm trying to say with that. I'm trying to
You're
relate.
creating
I'm
environment.
trying to
Yeah.
relate to what
It's
you said
environment.
about the feeling uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But and then the other thing you said is it's almost made me nauseous when you said it, right? I had somebody else say something similar to me years ago. Is you said, where you're sitting at right now in every aspect of your life is a reflection of your commitment level.
Mm-hmm.
And like it made me think of all the things that are going on in my life. And there are things that, and I went, oh, like I'm like, like I got uncomfortable. I got uncomfortable with that statement. You made me uncomfortable with that statement. You made me go, ooh, like, I don't. It's like this podcast is over, like and I got uncomfortable. And somebody once said to me, you're where you sit right now, you're responsible for where you're at. And he said to me, he goes, I'm not saying that as a judgment. I'm saying that because if you're the one who's responsible for being where you're at, all you need is you to dig out of where you're at. And he goes, wouldn't it be a bad thing if you had to rely on 15 people to dig out of where you're at and you had to
Mm-hmm.
rely on them? But really, since you're responsible for where you're at, you got yourself there. It's only going to take you to dig out of that. He goes, isn't that more freeing than it is? Like, doesn't that make you more free to realize you got yourself there? Now you can dig yourself out of that and you don't have to rely on other people, right? Like to me, there's freedom in that statement. There's
Mm-hmm.
freedom at first. When you said it, I got nauseous. And I started thinking about areas in my life where, yeah, my commitment level is why I'm in the situation I'm at. Well, all I need to do is change my commitment level and I can pull myself out of that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that leads me to another thing you said yesterday on the phone, and I wrote it down. High performers shrink the time between thought and action. And I'm a big believer in quotes. I always have quotes. I copy quotes. I use quotes a lot when people like have conversations like, well, I think about a quote. Because over time the quote changes. It turns into language and then turns into your language. Then you learn how to put it in your life, right? As opposed to just quoting somebody. High performers shrink the time between thought and action. That's such a powerful statement to me in the context of what we do with people, because not every person we work with on day one makes all the changes and they're perfect day two.
Mm-hmm.
They build, 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 and build over time, right? They do 1 or 2 habits, 3 or 4, and then over the year they make 6. Would it be fair to say that people who are high performers, it takes a shorter amount of time for them to implement all the things to create change?
Think a more accurate way to say it. And by the way, you just said a lot. It's something I want to go back to
Yeah,
after, but to
yeah.
respond to your question, first, the idea of velocity. There's a famous coach, been around since the 70s. His name is Werner Erhard, and he has a great write-up on velocity. With my former aviation background, it's a term that resonates with me.
Mhm.
First, let me point out why it matters. Why does it matter that when I shrink the time between a thought and the action, high performance shows up? Because the more time I have, what I call the gap between those two things, what do you think fills that gap?
Negative thought.
Negative thought.
Boom. Yeah.
Those
Jinx.
non-useful
Yeah.
thoughts.
Good job, Greg. Good job.
Those non-useful thoughts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If you're a person who, and I don't always do this, but I am committed to, when I have a thought about something, it could be to call someone, it could be to go out and do something. I'm in action right away because I know if I'm not, there's a risk that the thoughts that will dissuade me from doing the thing, you probably have, you could probably sit here for the next 6 hours and share your own experiences, the experience of others, where someone got real excited about something, then they came back the next day and said, you know what, I thought more about it. And up, up, up. And here's all the reasons why I'm not going to do it. Well, you shrink the time, you don't allow those thoughts to just, those 95% of the 30 to 60,000 a day that are not useful, you don't allow them to fill in that gap for you. Josh, the response I give you to your question is I don't have a definition. It's not useful to give a definition what that action is, simply that you're in action. Like the time it takes to do something is the time it takes to do it. As long as, and it could be one step, it could be 40 steps. Like you talked about having a client introduce just a couple things at a time, whether you call them baby steps or incremental. To me, that in and of itself could be the action,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, Josh, I'm going to start to eat healthy. Well, no, not tomorrow. Oh, it's Thanksgiving. Oh, we can't do Thanksgiving. Oh, Christmas is coming up. Not gonna be
Yeah.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? January has the bowl games, then the Super Bowl, and then Valentine's Day, and then oh wait, Arbor Day, and then there's this, and then there's that. You know what? I'll I'll do it in April. Oh, my cousin Bob's coming to town, and like, yeah. There, I want to tie it together with something you said after that, which is when you got really uncomfortable about what I said, Josh. First of all, hear your language. I am uncomfortable. No, you have the thought of being uncomfortable. Your client with the beautiful story that things got awkward. I was awkward at the table. No, she had the thought of awkward. And isn't it interesting? Did her friends ostracize her?
No.
Isn't that interesting? The thought wasn't true. We spend so much time building up this grand, we're story makers, we're masters at it. We build up these stories about what's gonna happen, and it almost never does. But
Mm-hmm.
here's the cruel irony. We don't learn. We absolutely don't learn. We'll go through it and we'll go, oh, that wasn't so bad. What was I thinking? And then the next thing comes up and it's back to square one because this thing up here, it
Mm-hmm.
just, the part that wants you to survive, it is relentless. It will never stop. Those thoughts that hold you back, I promise you, they'll stop when you're dead. So everyone who's listening, I'm asking you to get comfortable with the idea that they'll always be there. You can't vanquish them. If you are, we're at your funeral, I promise. However, you can upgrade your relationship with them and see them for what they are. That woman, what she was, Josh, in one word, demonstration. She ordered first. She didn't put it upon other people, didn't feel like she was going over the top of them to tell them what to do. She simply was being committed to her health, and who you're being has an impact outside of you, and it had another person order a salad and water. That is to me an incredible example of leadership,
Yeah. Right. Wow. Yeah.
self-leadership, and it has
Yeah.
an impact on others. And so she's creating others in their own way, performance, and she didn't tell them what to do by who she's being. She had others be in their own action to create themselves. That is leadership. That's powerful leadership. I
Yeah.
hope you tell her that the next time you talk to her. It's
I was
amazing.
just told I was so proud of her, right? I was so proud of her.
Yeah.
Even on Thanksgiving, she texted me 2 days after Thanksgiving, and she had one drink at Thanksgiving with her family, and had one meal and never really gorged. 2 days later, we did a follow up. She goes, "I don't even know who I am anymore." She goes, "Who is this person?" She goes,
I
"Who
love
is this
that.
person?" She goes, "Usually I spend Thanksgiving smashed, Friday trying to get over it, Saturday like trying to figure out how to get better, and then finally get back on it on Monday." She goes, "I never even felt like I got off my plan."
I
She
love
goes, "I
that.
don't even know." She goes, "Who am I?"
Mhm.
I go, you're a new person. You're different. You're a different person. Your identity is different now. Who you are is
I
different. I
bet.
said, did anybody give you crap? She's like, no, no,
Isn't
nobody
that
gave
great?
me
I bet
crap.
a year ago, Josh, if you had the same conversation about how she brings herself to Thanksgiving, she'd probably say something like, "It's just who I am.
Mhm.
It's just who
Just who
It's
I
I
who I
am.
am.
am. Yeah.
I stuffed myself. It's just who I am."
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
what we
well,
do. It's
there's
just what we
no,
do around
yeah,
here.
yeah, there's no
Yeah.
growth from that place. Yeah,
God,
I
you
would
know,
love to expand more on like being uncomfortable because I think uncomfortable is one of the most powerful things that you can do. Josh knows this. My dad is like very wise. My dad's such a wise guy. And like I learned so much of my language from my dad, but my dad's huge thing was if you're not uncomfortable, it's not worth it. You know, you're going to find the most growth in being uncomfortable. So I would love to talk through different strategies of like beating that level of uncomfortable, of like inserting yourself into that level of being uncomfortable and how to remind yourself that it's okay. Remind yourself that you're growing through that discomfort.
yeah. Gray, I go back to the idea of my relation with my thoughts.
Hmm.
Being uncomfortable it's just a thought. It
Hmm.
really is. And to your point, to me, it's a bit of an indicator, very useful indicator that, okay, well, this is starting to get to be in deep water
Hmm.
relative to how I usually am. I experience myself as on the right track.
Hmm.
And if I embrace those thoughts like uncomfortable is not good or it's true, I'm uncomfortable, I might turn back.
Hmm.
But if I see it for what it is, on the right track through assessment, I'm committed to the thing I'm going to go do. Thus, I'm not going to let uncomfortable do anything more than be an indicator, a
Hmm.
useful indicator, and I'll keep going. And what I desire to do is if I get to a point where I forget all that, and now I feel like I'm neck deep in the water and I'm not just uncomfortable, I'm starting to thrash around in the water. I can fall back on an experience I may have had in the past. It's like Josh's client, the one at the dinner table. If she got to another position where everyone's ordered before her, Josh, right? And now she's commitment, by the way, has a shelf life of now. Like a shelf life of now. Commitment doesn't endure naturally. You have to keep refreshing commitment. It's just the way it is. You're doing it anyway. You're
Hmm.
just asleep to what you're committed to. That's all.
Hmm.
Be awake to it. So in her case, to use as an example, Gray, everyone else has ordered. They ordered appetizers for the table. Oh, my friend here is actually buying me dinner. Man, like all of those thoughts can come up, and if she falls asleep, she'll fall back to appetizers and a big greasy burger or Jack and Coke, whatever it happens to be. Or she can think to herself, wait a minute, that's just a thought.
Hmm.
I recall using it's rare when I say looking in the rearview mirror is useful. This is a case where it can inform the past, can inform and instruct my present and the future I want to create. In this case, it could be, wait a minute, just because I'm not ordering first, what does that matter? And
Yeah.
boom, she could be right back in it. But
Hmm.
yeah, I love the idea of uncomfortable. It just doesn't occur to me, Gray, to dance with uncomfortable like it's the thing. Because if I'm dancing with like it's the thing, I'm giving it my power,
Mm.
Yeah.
and I choose not to do that.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think it's more so like recognizing that the situation maybe makes you uncomfortable, but also realizing that there is probably a greater good out of that discomfort. It's like one thing I practice very heavily is continuously doing hard things because hard things are very uncomfortable. And I tell my clients, the hard thing is relative. Hard is relative to you. So, running a marathon is really crazy for somebody. They might not ever do it, but saying no to alcohol might be their hard thing, right? So
Yes.
continuously choosing hard things in your day-to-day life or monthly or yearly or whatever it may be, the more accustomed you get to those hard things, the easier it is to say yes to it, right? So I always work through, okay, well, what was your challenging thing? Why are you having trouble saying yes to that? Like, what level of discomfort is that bringing you to, right?
Yeah, I
So
love
I
that. You're
just,
you're 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 asking to challenge those thoughts. I love it.
mhm,
I
Yeah,
think
very
about
much so.
I think about public speaking. Um,
Hmm.
I took three public speaking classes, two public speaking classes, and an impromptu class in college. And I've done some acting classes. And I had an acting teacher one time ask, it's like I had to do this impromptu thing in front of a group of people where you literally pull a topic out of a hat and you have 10 minutes. And man, when I tell you about nervous, awkward, uncomfortable, and over time, I've become better. It doesn't bother me to public speak anymore. And the lady said something to me. She goes, God, you seem really nervous, like really like awkward, uncomfortable. I mean, it is like public speaking for some people is like they sweat, they have anxiety about it, they completely forget who they are. And I said, yeah. She goes, let me tell you something. She goes, you're the only one. I'm like, what do you mean? She goes, you got 30 people in front of you. You're the only one nervous and awkward. The other 30 people don't care.
Right.
And I went, wow. What it did, it gave me, it allowed me for room for error because I wanted to be perfect.
Hmm.
And I wanted to be perfect in whatever I picked and do it perfect like I'm a great orator, right? And it gave me freedom to mess up. It made me realize I'm the only one uncomfortable. I'm causing it myself. I'm nervous. I have a ton of anxiety. When she goes, you're the only one uncomfortable. Nobody else cares. Also, it took a lot of like one thing it did too, it made me feel that like I'm not that big of a deal. They're not criticizing me. Um, I'm not that important. They're not all staring at me like it's, you know, like presidential speech, right? I'm not gonna, it's not gonna be on the news. Joshua Ortegon screwed up his impromptu 10-minute class, right? Right? There's not gonna be a bulletin at school. The president of the school is not gonna come down on me, right? Um, but it made me think about well, I was so uncomfortable because I had that thought when like I'm the only one uncomfortable in the room, right? I gave it so much value that it paralyzed me. I gave the uncomfortableness value and it paralyzed me. And it just that example made me think about when you talked about like the power of your thought and how it all of a sudden it became true to me. And she dispelled that truth by going, the other 30 people don't care. They're probably
Yeah.
more nervous about what they're gonna have to do. They're
Do
probably
you
sitting
think
there.
Do you think, like, to bring it all back, you think that's linked to passion, right? Because you want to perform well. So you have this idea in your head of like, I want this to be, because I remember when I was learning to instruct at Spenga, I was nervous about it because I want my performance to be perfect because it's my passion,
I think
right? So
it
you
comes down
think
to
that's
I
linked?
think it comes down to my desire to be perfect and to not have mistakes and to be and my inability to forgive myself for not being perfect in everything I do. I think it has a big connection to my desire to be infallible. That I didn't give myself, you know,
Grace is
the
hard.
the grace of like, hey, we're not going to be perfect. Nobody's going to be perfect. That's the purpose of the exercise, right? When
Yeah.
you speak in front of people, sometimes be quiet. If you're going to cough, you're going to misspeak. You can back up. You can say it again, right? You can do it that way. But that just what you said, Jamie, reminded me of man, I let that in that moment, let that thought completely dominate. I mean, I remember being hazy and like blurry before I went up. Like, oh, I'm gonna go up there and just pass out because I wasn't gonna be able to do it. I was 20 years old. And she's like, hey, nobody else cares. I'm like, oh,
It's true.
that makes me feel a lot better. Nobody's analyzing it. And I see that a lot in the people we work with, Jamie, is they'll have they'll have 3 weeks of doing really good. And then they'll mess up on a Friday, they make some bad choices, they'll skip a workout, and then they'll skip another workout, then they're done. Then they're gone. They're gone. It's that one mess up on a Friday, instead of fixing it on a Saturday, they tell them things. Again, thoughts. This isn't possible. I'm never going to be able to do this. Why am I even trying? Like, I screwed up. Well, had that burger and Five Guys on a Friday, might as well not even work out today. What's that gonna do? Right? Like, and then it's Monday, and then you follow up with them during the week, and they're like, I haven't done anything in 5 or 6 days, haven't even followed the plan. Well, what happened? Well, I had one bad day. And then I told myself a thought. I told myself, I'm never going to be able to do this, which is not true. It's too hard, which is not true. I already screwed up yesterday. Why not just completely derail today? Right? That's like, that's like having your grass start on fire. Instead of putting it out, you just light your bedroom on fire too, right? You just burn your house down, right? Like, hey, it's just a grass fire. Like,
Don't
throw it
burn it
out. Don't
all.
burn your whole house down,
It's not
right?
worth it.
It's
Yeah.
not worth
You
it.
know what's interesting about that example? You know, that guy who he had one slip up, right?
Mhm.
One meal on one day. How long had you been working with him at that point?
6, 7 months.
Okay. So why
And
don't
this
you
has been a
ask him?
process too. This has been,
Sure,
he's quit and restarted every 6 weeks.
sure. And look, I can acknowledge his progression. Like, I'll quote my coach here. Joy and satisfaction, the seeds of them are planted in progression. Like, ask that guy. Like, I'm not saying do this. This is not prescriptive, but I might do something like, let's go back 12 months in your life before you and I met or before you guys were coaching together. You know what you're calling a screw up? How many of your meals were like that? And if he's honest, he'll say all of them. I was completely asleep. Okay, so look what you've done. You've gone from 21 meals a week of being asleep to what they are to one or two. Do you not see that?
Yeah, what's the
Mhm.
big
Is that
deal?
not progression? Like,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And look, Voltaire said that perfection is the enemy of the good. So there's certainly something at play where people feel like they need to be perfect and they don't leave space for slip ups. And I would offer to both of you as a bit of a challenge, you have an opportunity to help people see that in the midst of them being human beings, the imperfection and the messes that we make, there's progression in there.
Mhm.
It's like the old expression, if you take 4 steps forward and 1 step back, you've still taken 3 steps forward.
Mhm.
But if they're not careful, they got numb to that, and what they'll just see is the 1 step back. There's an opportunity to help them see for themselves that no, it's 3 steps forward.
They're not seeing the net
And that
positive.
might that
Yeah.
might ignite the passion to say, okay, well, maybe next week I'll have an entire perfect week of 20 of 7 days of hitting my calories and my macros. And if I only slip up every 2 weeks, that's like, yeah. And someone could even have a complete crushed week. And I can see that. Look, we follow our habits and patterns. That goes back to the neuroscience. And I can use an as-lived example. When I first had my shoulder injuries, Josh, and I didn't go to the gym for a few days, I noticed because I look for these things in me, how easy it was to not go to the gym. And I had to renew my commitment to going to the gym and set the conditions to make it a natural part of my day all over again. Now, it wasn't as difficult as it was years ago when I started after years, but I just noticed how easy it is to slip back into the status quo. It's this thing up here does not sleep. The part that wants to bring it to the status quo, that wants to tell you that things are hard, it will not give up. And that 95 to 5% of the thoughts I talked about, that ratio, here's even more bad news. And I won't delve into the neuroscience, but the part of your brain that the unconscious part that has you want to survive and not get thrown out of the cave operates millions of times faster than the conscious part of your brain that would have you look at the youthful thoughts. So not only does it outnumber you, it outworks you. Yeah, sorry if life is unfair and you can still transcend it.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
it takes work and it takes time, and you're seeing it in your clients and their progression. And I acknowledge the progression, because if I can acknowledge the progression in others and myself, be a demonstration of acknowledgement, what I can create over there if they want, if they're committed. is for them to see it too. Like your client at the table who ordered the salad and the Diet Coke and the water. She didn't tell anyone else to do it, but someone else, because of who she's being responsible for her health, saw something in themselves and they took action. And there may be other people at the table who just say, what's going on here? Or what a freak, or fine. If you're looking to please other people or to make them like you for what you're doing, that's not this conversation. Promise.
We also we also made a preemptive decision. I did not allow her to, I did not say, hey, just go to the dinner and order something good. Right? I didn't just throw her into that and let her make a decision in real time on a whim. She told me the situation. I said, here's the plan. Make a decision right now, hours before you go, that's what you're going to do. Therefore, when it comes, you're not caught in the passion of the moment. Like, it's like Monday morning getting up and going to the gym. You make that decision Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You don't go to bed on Sunday night, go, yeah, if I feel like it, I'll go to the gym in the morning. Man, you ain't going. You plan to go. You make the decision to go. You make that decision preemptively. And you have it planned out that you're going to do it. I feel like that makes it easier for people.
Well, in a way, Josh, what you just did is you went from a decision to action. You shrunk the time. She happened to make the action or take the action, which is the decision what to eat, before she got to the table. So to me, that's an illustration of when you introduce velocity, decision, thought to decision to action, it creates performance. And like, I give her all the credit. While I acknowledge you for being the one to create accountability in that, she's the one who had to sit there at the table. She has a choice. She has domain over herself and her own decisions. She made it. I think that's extraordinary. And you contributed, but she did it.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It makes me go back to kind of how we originally started. My desire to want to ask you to be on here is why people quit. And I originally had the thought process that people quit their fitness journey and their nutrition journey because it's too hard and there's delayed results. There's delayed results, meaning you work out for a month, you might not see it. You eat healthy for a month, you might not see it. You get on social media and see people they say, I lost 30 pounds in a month. And meanwhile, you lost 1. And it's hard. And I realized that that's such a concrete stance to have. Oh, well, you didn't do it because it's hard. Or you didn't do it because you're impatient. Would it be fair to say people quit because they let their thoughts convince them of something that's not true? I know quitting's a big thing, right? It's a broad subject, but I'm trying to reshape my how I see it.
I go back to commitment.
Okay.
Like, again, if I drop the idea of quitting or not quitting, again, because there's a judgment and there's baggage that comes with that, and I can make someone defensive. I simply want to be with them to discover what are they committed to. And if they say they're committed, most of us, we say we're committed to something, but our actions are inconsistent with what we say. Like, I can discover that with someone, or I can point it out from a place of assessment and with them look at what they see in it. I want to know, it doesn't have to be their health and anything. If you say you want to create a marriage that is extraordinary and you tell me what that looks like to you, and yet it's not happening, like you're telling me something about your spouse, I want to discover, how are you showing up to it? What do you see? What are you committed to? What's in the way? And I'll never not discover something that's happening inside of them. Like, this is not about the spouse. With your clients, it's not about how far away the gym is. It's not about, like, those are the conditions. I'm asking them, to get really clear about what they're committed to. Yes, let's look at what's in the way. Why is it in the way? Yeah, we can be creative and either get it out of the way or have them see the commitment is enough where they can outcreate the condition. If I've got someone who's not committed in some aspect of life, there's nothing I'm going to do to make them committed. I could be a demonstration of commitment. I want to get clear. I want them to say, declare that they're committed or declare they're not committed. If they're not committed, great.
Yeah.
Have a nice life or have a
Yeah.
nice day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but to be, in your world, I'm imagining to be in a coaching relationship with someone who's not committed to their health. Is that a satisfying relationship for you guys?
Oh,
No, it's really
no.
hard.
Yeah, it's really hard.
And imagine how hard it is for them, and they're the ones
Mhm.
paying.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
won't let someone hire me as a coach if I don't have an experience of them being more committed to the outcomes they say they want than I'm committed to them having the outcomes. That's a
Oh,
painful year-long
oh,
relationship
God.
if I'm
Mhm.
more committed than they are. I just won't do it. I just won't do. I'm not saying I haven't done it in the past. I'm
Mhm.
just better at sniffing it out, discovering it, or creating commitment in them before we have a formal relationship.
When we have our man, it makes me think we have an intake form,
Mhm.
and it makes me rethink one of the questions says, how committed are you to this journey, 1 through 10? And as I sit here, I think I want to change that to just the question, are you committed?
Yeah, without the 1 through 10, like
Without the
without the
1 through
scale.
10, because what's
They're all
9 out of
tens.
what's 9
They're
out
all
of 10?
tens.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's
Like,
what I was going to say. A lot of the time, it can be kind of hard to figure out the level of commitment in the beginning because majority of the time, I would argue that most clients have a really good 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then it's but sixth, seventh, 8th week that we find they're not as committed. They have to take a step back. They don't understand the things that we're doing. It's become too hard. Something's gotten in the way. So I feel like it really does take us a month and a half, maybe 2 months to figure out if you're really committed or not because this is a long-term thing. It's not just, hey, I'm going to do it for 4 weeks and it's over. It's you're going to do this for the rest of your life, not just for the 4 weeks, not just for the 8, the 12.
Hey, Josh, if I can make a suggestion, I wonder what question like this would help you discover in an intake form. What does commitment to your health look like?
mm,
I like that. We have what kind of sacrifice would this take? But I like the commitment to the like what are you willing to commit to? What is your commitment? Like what are you declaring as your commitment?
Yeah, what does commitment look like? To me, that's going to give you an opportunity to expose like how they're bringing themselves to it.
Mhm.
And it creates an opportunity for follow-up questions from you to really get to the heart of what's in the way for them. And then you get to make a choice. Either the conditions that they see in the way, you guys, it aligns for you there. Those are the kind of things we can get over, or it may trigger in you the idea that I don't know if they're ready for this yet, or you just need to go discover what would it take for them to be ready.
well, it's
Mhm.
interesting. We do ask the question, what does success look like to you? Like when
Mhm.
it's all said and done, what does success look like to you? I love what does commitment to your health look like? And if you're listening to this, man, that's you can replace health with anything.
Mhm.
What does commitment to your ex look like? What does commitment to your academics look like? What does commitment to your relationship look like? Um, I'm now kind of mad at myself that I have 1 through 10 because like, what's a 9? Like to me, 9 is still not committed. Like it almost goes
Or
against the intent, the whole definition of commitment. There's no 9.
I think too, like forcing a client to write out and explain what it's actually going to take, it's going to make them second guess and either say, I am committed to these things, or as they start typing it out, they might be like, ooh, I don't know. This is kind of a lot for me to take on right now. I think there's a lot of power in that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like God, Jamie, right? Like, I think about me and Gray always talk about we have really busy Mondays and Tuesdays. Mondays and Tuesdays are really busy. Like Sunday nights when Monday hits, Monday's a whirlwind.
Mhm.
And Monday, I usually get home around 6. I have jujitsu at 7, right? So I train Brazilian jiu-jitsu 3 days a week. It's not negotiable. It's built within my life and in my relationships and everybody that knows me, right? It's the longest relationship I've ever had in my life outside of my parents and family is Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I tell people all the time, it's like, hey, Brazilian jiu-jitsu started before we met. Like I don't know what to tell
Mhm.
you, right? And I say it as a joke, obviously. But I've seen so many people in the jiu-jitsu journey quit. Probably 90% of people quit before they get to like a black, probably 99% of people quit. They really quit after they get their blue belt. After the first 2 to 3 years, they'll get a blue belt. The blue belts disappear. It's kind of a joke in jiu-jitsu that once they get their first success and their first belt, they completely disappear. Like they're gone. You never see them again. So the people that endured a black belt and and there has not been a Monday. I'm not kidding. And then I'll be transparent. There's not been a Monday where I've sat down at 6 o'clock and I got to be there at 7. And I go, man, what's one day if I miss it? What's one day?
Mhm.
So I get it. And I go, okay, no, the hardest part of jujitsu for me is putting my bag in the car and getting in the car on Mondays. Thursdays are fine. It's not busy. Saturdays are wonderful. I get up and go, right? Thursdays aren't that busy. Monday, I know that the hardest part is getting in the car and driving 16 minutes and getting out. Once I'm there, I'm like, God, I love it. I'm so glad. I love everybody here. This is wonderful. I never want to leave. Um, and I tell myself too, the fastest way to miss a week is to miss the first day, right?
Mhm.
If I miss Monday, then Thursday becomes easier. Saturday, I can just, well, the football game's on and we're gonna do that, right? Um, the hardest thing for me is I sit there and I hate that thought, man. I hate it. It almost makes me upset that I have the thought of that devil that pops up and goes, "Hey, what's one day? Man, everybody's not going to get better than you in a day. Maybe you need the rest." And sometimes it could be I need the rest, but I got to go. I I hate that part of me. I don't like that part of me that I'll be sitting on the couch and watching TV, the kids around hanging out, and you know that's that little butterfly pop, that little devil butterfly pops up the shoulder and goes, what's one day? I wish I could cut that part off. I wish I could burn that dead wood off. I wish it could go away. I don't like it. I feel it gives me a feeling of weakness.
Listen to your language, Josh. I want to may I point
Fine.
out something you just said?
Yes, please do.
You said, I hate that part of me. It's not you. It's a thought.
Yeah,
Your thoughts are not you. You're
yeah,
the one thinking the
yeah,
thoughts.
yeah.
See how easy it
Yes.
is. We're in the
Yeah.
middle of a conversation about
And I go
we're
straight to
not
it.
our thoughts, and your language reveals your relationship with thoughts. It's I just say that not as a judgment, it's just useful to notice.
Yes, it is
It's not
very
you.
useful to notice. Yeah.
It's not you.
I guess I could say I don't like having that thought. I don't hate it, but I wish I want to get better at that thought, right?
But
I
I
want to,
think I to argue you are good at that thought because it's gonna it happens to me all the time too. But
yeah,
you just say, I'm still gonna go,
yeah.
Yeah,
So that's
that's
Jamie,
right.
you
that's
hit me
you.
up all the time and you're like, I didn't want to go to the gym. It's cold by the
Yeah.
anyway, day checked off. And you're like, boom. And like you
Yep.
say that all the time, leg day. I did Bulgarian split squats today in the
Hmm.
cold out of spite for you.
But
Right? Right?
it's the same thing we tell our clients. It's like I told a client this yesterday, if I were motivated to go to the gym every day, I'd go 6 out of 10 days. My motivation's there like 60%,
Yeah.
My
Uh,
discipline's there. I'm like, I gotta go to the gym. Like I
and
will
that
kill somebody if I
and
don't
that
go to the gym.
comes back to commitment. Right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm committed. So
Committed. I'm there every Monday at 5 o'clock.
when I'm
Hmm.
committed, it's easier to um when I'm committed, it's easier to fight off those thoughts and urges because I'm committed. I'm bigger than that thought. My commitment level is bigger than that thought. That a way to think about it?
That it's certainly a way to look at it. My relationship with it is if commitment is as I hold it, which is do what's required, those thoughts simply don't matter, and they're still there. I promise you, when I'm going to get up early tomorrow morning and go to the gym before we get on the road for a road trip, there's a lot of things I'd rather be doing, like, oh, I could get up and pack, a more leisurely pace. No, I'm getting up and I'm going to the gym. It's not even in the conversation to debate it. Now my brain's debating it, or the thoughts are debating it, but I'm saying I'm committed to it. It's a foregone conclusion. And a word. I want to leave you guys with a word.
Right.
There's a friend of mine who's a podcaster here in Charleston who I think the world of him, and he picks a word of the year. Every year he puts out as part of a not a New Year's resolution, but a declaration, his goals and a word. And it had me thinking a word that I love that I might embrace in 2025 is the word unreasonable. To me, committed action to the uninitiated looks unreasonable. Josh, you made a comment when the three of us first got on this call that we're all here on time. I don't know any other way to be,
Yeah, I
because
don't either. Yeah.
I am my word. And integrity to me is being my word. And for some people, they would say, oh, well, look, you guys have probably seen this. Look, I was going to meet you somewhere, and I'm sorry I'm a couple minutes late, but this happened and that happened, and all the stories and the reasons come out. And everyone will say, well, that's reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying I take a stand for, if I'm being my word, if I'm being commitment, reasonable and unreasonable do not factor in. It's done. And some people may see it as unreasonable. Great. It's like the woman, your client, to say one more time, I hate to keep rehashing it, but it's such a beautiful story. Expecting her to order a salad, a Diet Coke, and a water when she's with her friends. It's happy hour. It's just one time. It's the holidays. Da, da, da. It's reasonable to expect her to just sort of give up that one day, or it's unreasonable to ask her to. What does that have to do with anything? I'm either
Mm-hmm.
committed or I'm not committed. Yeah, see me as unreasonable.
Mm.
Wait a minute. You're saying that I should have known that the bridge was going to be up, thus I should have been there on time? No, I don't care about the bridge. I'm simply saying we had an agreement to meet at this time in this place. And look, you weren't here. And look, we all have reasons and excuses. Nobody, nobody wants to hear our reasons and excuses. Nobody.
No, no.
But we'll share them.
Oh yeah.
Man, we'll share them, because
Oh
Because it
yeah.
makes you feel better.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me it's
Okay.
okay that I was late, or
Yes.
Josh, tell me because my shoulders are injured, it's okay not to go to the gym. You gotta validate me. You gotta validate me, because it's life or death. So the stories and the reasons drive us. I'm saying no, not for me anyway. I am, if you want to call it unreasonable, I am unreasonably committed. I'm unreasonably my word. Yeah, and the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the world, 99.999% of us, will get right behind you to tell you how it's okay. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Jamie, when I
It's
realized me
fine.
and you were going to be good here was and I'll go back to this. I never said this to you. We scheduled when you first reached out about coaching. We scheduled a time, and I'm used to people having a hard time meeting the time. I'm used. Unfortunately, I'm used to people being late, not on time.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I said, Jamie, what's about like 1 o'clock, Sam? And you hit me back, and he said, Josh, I will be on the phone at 1 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it to me in like on a text. It was a text, but you said it to me with such. I read it. I read the text intentionality, as in, Josh, I don't do about one.
Mm-hmm.
You said one. I will be on the phone at one. And you know
Mm-hmm.
that me and you have never been late for a call. Neither of us. It's always been 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Right then. And I love that because it's intentional. Okay. So I knew we were going to work well when you're like 1 o'clock. I said, Josh, I will be on the phone at 1 o'clock. And I went, oh, we ain't playing around here. Like, this guy's serious. We're business. Like, this guy's business. I leave my football coach. I'll give him a credit. His name's John Wheeler. And he's one of the hardest working football coaches I've ever been around in my life. Right. And he's such a hardworking guy, a coach that people use the word obsessed. And oh, he's obsessed. He's up till 3. He's obsessed. He's upset. And they use it as a way to kind of mock him sometimes. Oh, he's obsessed. And I said, John, don't ever let somebody mistake your passion for obsession, because you love the kids that much. You're willing to work that hard. And I say that to him all the time. And I remember one time we were talking about it with a bunch of people from our school, and somebody goes, ain't nobody love football more than John Wheeler. And they almost said it with like a little bit of spite behind it. It wasn't it wasn't it was an accusation more than it was describing him. And they said, ain't nobody love football more than John Wheeler. And I heard that, and I heard kind of the bitterness behind it. And I went, why is that bad? Why is that wrong? Why are we trying to demonize and call it obsession when all it is an insatiable passion for what you do? What's wrong with that? Well, I feel like we've why is that? I was just confused. You know why
Guy
he does
doesn't
it?
have it.
Not a job. It's a passion.
Mm-hmm.
And he's driven by giving his best for the kids because he asks the kids to be their best. How can I ask them to be their best and work hard and do all these things? It's like I work with a football coach, another football coach who's looking for weight loss. And I said this to him. I said, as a coach, we always tell our kids discipline, motivation, work hard. And he said this was a great thing he said to me. He's a big guy, he's former offensive lineman, he's overweight. He goes, you know what hit me, Josh? He goes, I went to a coaches conference and I saw a bunch of overweight coaches that could barely move around. They're 150 pounds overweight. And he said, this hit me. He said this to me 2 weeks ago. He goes, how am I expected to tell my kids to have discipline, work hard, have passion, commit to the team when I can't even commit to my own health? He goes, I feel like the biggest hypocrite. And I'm like, wow, like that hit me in the stomach. He's like, I'm 100 pounds overweight. And I preach to my kids about hard work and discipline. And I ride the golf cart around when I tell my kids to sprint. And I eat and drink too much. And I tell my kids to be disciplined. He's like, I said, man, that's a breakthrough moment for you. Right. So these things you talk about make me reflect on those conversations I've had with people about commitment. Right. I've always said on that obsession and passion thing, I've never understood it. I guess I don't want to understand it. There are certain things around me that I don't want to get. I don't want to understand. Like, oh, I don't get why. I don't ever want to get it. I don't ever want to be like, I'm okay with that. It's just something about that. I don't want to die on my deathbed as a guy who they say, oh yeah, he kind of figured it out and he understood why people don't want to be their best. No, I don't. I'm not gonna die that way. I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if that's in my DNA.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But Jamie, I respectful time. I also know by analytics that people don't listen to 3-hour podcasts unless you're Joe Rogan, I guess. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I am no Joe Rogan. So I really appreciate your time. I'm going to admit I've wanted to ask you to do this for the longest time, but I had the thought of you saying no. I had that thought. Because I know you got a lot of things going on and do a lot of things. And I'm like, what if he says no and he just can't? I don't want to make him feel like he has to do it. And I had the thought. Wasn't true. It's the thought. So I appreciate you doing this. I think there's so many things people can learn from this. There's so many things I learned from this. I got a page of notes. Man, I really appreciate our conversations, our time. I appreciate you being coachable.
Yeah.
I appreciate you. I try to be coachable.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate your time. And thank you for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you both for having me.
Yeah, that was incredible. That made my wheels turn. I feel like I
Yeah.
can't take a nap now.
Yeah.
With all due respect.